Hi everyone, welcome. Welcome to Hacker Summer 2026. This is the first webinar in the series of webinars that we are going to do this month. We are going to talk about evading MDI, Red Team Tradecraft for AD attacks. So about me, you can find me on Twitter. I'm Nikhil_MITT there. I'm the founder of Altered Security. We are an attack with laser sharp focus on breaking Microsoft technologies. You can find me on GitHub. I'm the creator of Nishang and a few more tools for red teamers. I'm of course interested in Active Directory security, offensive PowerShell, Azure Red Team. I've been playing a lot with uh, co-pilot red teaming, I would say, not AI red teaming. It is a huge field now, but me and my team, we have been playing a lot with AI in Microsoft's ecosystem. So probably soon you will also see interested in AI red teaming here. I've previously spoken multiple times at DEF CON, main stage, villages, multiple versions of Black Hat, BrewCon, and more. All right, so just establishing my credentials, those of you who have not been part of our community. Okay. So who we are as an organization, Altered Security has trained more than 50,000 security professionals from more than 130 countries. So I always, like an old man, I repeat this, but I would still like to do that. The idea to start Altered Security came to my mind in, more than a decade ago, actually. It's somewhere in 2012, 2013, when I would be teaching classes at Black Hat, specifically one time at Black Hat Europe. I taught an AD pen testing slash threat teaming sort of class, breaking into AD. And the lab was configured in GCP, Google Cloud. And it was a fantastic, well-received class. Now, what I got to know was not everyone was happy with the pricing of that conference. I mean, nothing against the conference, good for them, but not everyone was able to afford it. People were asking that, can we continue to get access to the lab environment after the class? And that is the time when I thought that, okay, probably there should be something that trains you with world-class stuff, and you should not need to sell your left kidney for that. So that has been our motto for all of our classes. They should be affordable. That is something that we start with. Having said that, I've been mentioning this. We have been under tremendous pressure actually. The RAM prices have been so high recently. Our server provider has hiked their rentals two times in the first quarter. But we have been able to hold on to our prices. I'm not sure how long it would be the case, but we have been able to do that. So affordability is our first motto. Then the courses and labs should be easy to access, fun, big enough to feel enterprise-like. So these are our core values for while we are developing any of our courses. Make sure that buy stuff from us. That is mandatory for me as a founder to pitch stuff to you. Buy on-demand courses, instructor-led boot camps. You can find us on GitHub as well. This is our lab platform that you get access to, when you go for paid courses. This is our free lab platform. So if you would like to taste how our stuff looks like when it comes to specifically Azure Red Teaming, go for the Red Labs platform. Okay. Now, what is this event? This is, our month-long red teaming event. So this started, to be honest, a couple of years ago. Uh, I guided someone for a talk submission at DEF CON, and the talk was very well received, but it was rejected. How do I know very well received? Because when they asked for feedback, they, sort of barely missed it. So they didn't took it well. The person didn't took it well and stopped submitting to any of the conferences. And I could not convince them actually to go for any other conference. And that is when I realized it. Okay, the hacker summer camp at Vegas, that's not for everyone. All right, there's a lot of cost involved in flying there, staying there, attending the conferences. And I believe that specifically for those who research for months to submit a fantastic talk, my idea was that okay, if you could not go to Hacker Summer Camp, come to Hacker Summer. That is the idea about of Hacker Summer. That is okay. Why don't we just sit on our backside and still enjoy our community involvement? Talks, probably discounts, whatever gets people to attend this. So what we are planning this month is some research blogs, webinars. You are in a webinar right now on what? On on-prem red teaming, Azure, AI, whatever comes our way. A call for papers, as I mentioned earlier. On 24th of July, we are going to have two community sessions. That is not from any invited speaker, not from anyone from my team. It would be from you. So two talks. Once again, I call you to submit to it. Nice perks. You can present in front of a global audience, fellow hackers. That is the nicest perk. We also have a $500, 500 USD honorarium, and you can pick any course with 30 days lab access from Altered Securities catalog. So, if you have been eyeing one of our courses and it has been very expensive for you, so not only if you are selected for or your session is selected, not only you will get access to the course, we will also pay you a nice honorarium. All right. So please respond to that. And also there will be discounts and giveaways. So in my opinion, I mean, Hacker Summer helps us as an organization in getting more eyeballs, more community involvement, and it is good for the community as well. You get to get, free stuff, free involvement, discounts, giveaways, etc. So those of you who don't know, look at the Discord invite. This is our main Discord channel, Enterprise Security. You can find the invite on top of our website as well. So all the questions goes to the general channel. Right? Please do not use the microphone during the session. Feel free to do it after the session. And yeah, this is an open webinar, so please behave. So what are we going to do? We are going to discuss OPSEC considerations for a red team operation. All right. The focus is going to be identity attacks. That is, a lot of times the focus remains on the endpoint. Is there sysmon? Is there an EDR? How do I bypass the AV? But what a lot of times we forget the vision of or the sight of is identity attacks. That is, if you compromise an identity or try to compromise an identity, what happens? What happens if a tool by Microsoft, a service by Microsoft that is specifically designed, not designed, specifically acquired for attacks like this, if that is configured, what happens? How do we evade that? That is going to be the agenda. So I have put aside 2 hours for this, but we'll not, be very strict with that. If I would wrap up the session earlier and there would be no questions, we'll close this earlier. If we have to, sort of extend it by a few minutes, we'll go for that. So 2 hours that we advertise is more of an ask that, okay, probably, take 2 hours out of your busy schedule. Okay, one thing that I would like to address, my team didn't allow me to write that anywhere. What I observed in the month of Azure Red Teaming was specifically for students, and take this from someone who has been in the industry for more than 18 years now. What I observed during the month of Azure Red Teaming was that we would have people joining the webinar and leaving it just to get a certificate of participation. Oh no, please don't do that. Please don't do that. All right. So I have come up with a rule which we never advertised, but my ground, my rules is if you stay at least for 45 minutes in the session, then we'll issue you a certificate if you registered and stayed. Okay. Let's have that gentleman handshake. That, let's not just join and leave for the sake of a participation certificate, specifically those of you who are students. All right, let's build some uh, ethics, some code of conduct right from the beginning of your career. All right. So, what is MDI? It is, if I quote Microsoft's documentation to begin with, it is Defender for Identity is designed to detect threats that specifically target identities. So, why MDI? What happened? What is the story behind MDI? So, there was a tool more than a decade ago. I don't know the name of the organization. It was an Israeli cybersecurity startup. I'm still friends, not friends, acquaintances with some of them. There was a tool developed called ATA, Advanced Threat Analytics. Now, what ATA was capable of is you set it up on a server, on a dedicated server in your environment, in your Active Directory environment. It would hook up, that is, it would install a service on your domain controller or domain controllers. And over a period of time, it would learn what is the normal in your Active Directory environment. It would build profiles, literally build profiles. It was fantastic. I miss that era where you can actually look at a vendor stuff because it was installed in on-prem environment. Now with everything, almost everything moving to the cloud, what you mostly have is what telemetry goes there. Big difference. So I researched on ATA. I think it was in 2017 when I first researched about, 2016-17 when I researched about it. Now, how ATA used to work was there would be a server. You will install ATA on a server, and you can actually look at what it was doing. So what ATA would used to do, it is pretty similar. Of course, they have not changed a lot when it comes to the original engine, but you could see what was going on. So they would have a profile for each Active Directory object. If it was a user, they would have a profile for the user. Okay. Uh, that is, what are the machines that the user usually logs on from? What is the ticket encryption type? So you would see that there was, you could actually go ahead, log on to the server if it was in your own environment, and you could actually go ahead and see that there, how the profiles are being built. And that was fantastic to understand the actual detection mechanism. And the entire detection was and still is on one single thing, anomaly. ATA, then ATP, then Azure ATP, now MDI. What it looks for is anomaly. It learns the behavior of a user that, okay, the user logs in, they use this encryption type for service tickets, that for TGT, and so on. And when there is a deviation from that, it would complain in form of an alert. That is how MDI works. All right. That is, it looks for the second point that you can see on the slides, the any anomalous or suspicious activities. Now, for suspicious activities, it does not need any learning period. What would be a suspicious activity? Let's say, running DC sync from a non-domain controller machine. Now, domain controllers would run replication all the time. Okay. Domain controllers will run replication all the time, but not, let's say, the domain administrator. The domain admin never runs replication. So that does not need any learning period. That is not an anomalous activity. That is suspicious activity. That, okay, this by design is not the case. And now, for past couple of years, Microsoft has extended MDI drastically. So there was a time when the sensors could only be on the DCs. Now you can have sensors on file systems, that is on Federation ADFS, on ADCS, that is certificate services, and also on Entra Connect. Now, the moment you have it on Entra Connect, now this is Microsoft trying to address the hybrid identity issues. And there is an entire new generation of alerts. Now, interestingly, if you recall, in the beginning, I was talking about, they should merge Entra ID Connect with MDI. So as of now, what MDI is capable of is alerts for synced users, not for cloud only users. Unless, if you are forcing your cloud only users to come from uh, the path of come to the on-prem part for authentication. Okay, that is what MDI is capable of. What we are going to look at during the talk is about MDI sensor on the DC. Why? Because that still is the most prevalent use case of MDI. Okay. So what are the detections? If you look at Microsoft's documentation about MDI, if you look at Microsoft's documentation about MDI, it targets attacks in different stages, techniques in different stages of an identity-based attack. What stages? Recon, that is, the enumeration part. Compromised credentials, when someone tries to, they say a group membership, but I would say compromised credentials is something like, let's say, attacks like pass the TGT, pass the ticket, sorry, overpass the hash. Then lateral movement is when you try to access other machines. Uh, so to be honest, overpass the hash would be somewhere between, not between, it would be both part of compromised credentials and lateral movement. Same goes for certificate reuse, that is also a part of lateral movement when you try to access a new machine. And then comes the domain dominance. In fact, it is the domain dominance part that actually got the organization that originally developed ATA. It was this organization that got ATA acquired. This acquisition happened in 2016. That was the peak era when AD was absolutely continuously ravaged. It still is, but the eyeballs have moved from it. There is something called actual threat, and then there is threat perception. When you think that, okay, my Active Directory is, this is on fire because everyone is talking about it. There are blog posts, there are talks, so absolutely everyone was talking about Active Directory security. So you would see that, okay, this is on fire. I need to secure that. The fire is still there, but now people are talking about, okay, how to use uh, AI to do the stuff that, that is what the board and the leadership thinks. Now, okay, those four guys, is it possible for me to replace them with an AI or with an agent, that is? So, the focus is still there. So the attacks are still there, but the focus has been moved. So domain dominance is where MDI actually shines. Okay. This is what got ATA acquired, because, tickets, attacks like Golden Ticket was a fresh one at that time. And it had a shock value that, okay, if someone once compromised their Active Directory environment, they would be in forever. Okay. Now, what are the alerts? So Microsoft says that there is an ongoing transition to unified alerting experience. So MDI alerts are visible in the security M365 security or security dashboard, Microsoft security dashboard. But there are two different categories. One is the classic alerts. This is the original category, and there are Defender alerts as well now. Both are, of course, based on MDI sensors and MDI detection logic. But who consumes that signals, who makes use of that logic, that is something that results in how these alerts are displayed. Okay. So what was the classic format, or what is the classic format? Five categories: recon and discovery, the enumeration part mostly, persistence and privilege escalation, credential access, lateral movement, and anything that is miscellaneous. Other alerts was miscellaneous. In case of the defender format, there are multiple categories. And this defender format covers not only sensors on the domain controller, that is ADDS, it also covers ADCS, ADFS, and infraconnect. That is why you would have stuff like even initial access alerts. Okay. Now, how does detection look like? Okay. Now, those some of you might already know this. Some of you already know this. I focus a lot on MDI evasion. Okay, specifically in the CRTP, the beginner level course that I teach. Okay, so we are going to take a look at some of the alerts that our users generate. Why, how? So we have, a sort of a unique position, unique visibility when it comes to uh, the understanding of how attackers operate in an enterprise environment, in an on-prem media environment. All right. So we actually observe, we do not actively monitor, we do not monitor what you're doing. I mean, we sort of do, but we don't hold a gun to you for that. So we observe more than 3,000 attacker machines. And those of you who have seen it, you guys execute thousands of attacks every day. The sheer number of, let's say, Kerberos string requests or golden tickets that are submitted to our infrastructure, that is pretty high. So we see more than 3,000 attacker machines. When I say thousands of attacks, that is actually thousands of attacks. And I'm not saying it for just the sake of putting it in here. Not port scans, not packets, actual Active Directory attacks. And now interestingly, even though I personally take care of that, you should not generate alerts in MDI. When I was looking at the stats for this talk, you guys have generated more than 7,000 MDI alerts in past 6 months, which is a lot. Are you guys even listening to me? When I say that, okay, let's try not to generate MDI alerts, are you just, yeah, whatever? Because I could see 7,000 alerts. Come on, you broke my heart. I would, it would be great if I would say that I could find only 7 alerts in past 6 months, and that would be something. Okay. But such is life. Such is life. So, our users, that is you guys, have generated more than 7,000 alerts in past 6 months in our MDI console. And I have to actually put a declaration over here that I actually want you to not generate that, but these alerts are deliberately generated. So when deliberately generated, a lot of times, as we'll see later on, the way I structured stuff is, for example, when you run Sharphound, that is Bloodhound's collector, without taking into consideration any OPSEC, it would generate multiple alerts. So a lot of times it is because of that. But come on, you can do better. Okay. So what are the top 10 alerts that I have seen? A lot of it, three of them combined together 1,257 alerts only for Kerberos. Not Kerberos, Kerberosting. You guys, just like any attacker, all of us, we love Kerberosting. Why? What is the Kerberosting attack? You look for an interesting service account. You request a service ticket, save it to the disk, brute force it offline. Offline brute forcing, there is no account lockout. You can throw your password cracking rig at it, whatever you have, and it is pretty silent. And it looks like that, Microsoft's team, MDI team, has made their mission of their life to actually detect Kerberoasting. Okay. So the largest number of detections by count is related to Kerberoasting. Then comes the golden ticket attack, which also makes sense, to be honest. Why it isn't? It is a headline attack. People like to talk about it. I mean, to be honest, golden ticket has been off an operator's uh, techniques for a while now. This is fantastic, may still be usable, but if you are running an operation where you don't want to get detected, this is not an attack for you. What else? I've bunched together a couple of them: suspicious Kerberos authentication and suspected overpass the hash attack. Now, these are, to be honest, beta for me as an attacker. Why? You put all of your efforts in, finally, you manage to get a set of credentials. But now, when you use them, what does credential mean here? Passwords, TGTs, certificates, tokens. Tokens don't count, tokens are not detected. So, any sort of credential, when you actually try to use that, you send it to the KDC, request a TGT, then this detection steps in. Okay, 870 for them. This, and this. Sharp Hound, one word, or any other tool that recklessly enumerates an Active Directory environment. Okay, large count. And then desync, of course. Now, please note that the basis of evasion is, of course, from our labs, but the testing has been mostly in the labs, but this is absolutely what we have observed. People who are regularly talked to have observed in actual enterprise environments. Attackers are also, criminals, bad attackers. We are the good attackers. Bad attackers are also from around. All right. They do not have, magically have more OPSEC safe options. They want to quickly get in, loot stuff, and get out. So they would be executing same or similar attacks. Okay. So this is what we are against. We are up against. Okay, let me actually show you if I have that open somewhere. What do these alerts look like? Please note that I'm going to show you the combined dashboard of all our on-prem labs. So there would be some ongoing detections. Please do not read a lot into it, that why so many detections. You guys are not listening to me. That is why so many detections. So this is what it looks like. This is what it would look like when you run attacks recklessly in an enterprise environment. Okay. We'll open some of these alerts in a moment. Any question on whatever we have discussed up to now, please, on Discord. Any question at all? Hmm. Could be an interesting course staying under the radar. It could be. It could be, my friend. I could work on it, but then I have to come live with you. I believe you have an idea. You have an idea. This I'm doing it on weekends, This is a Saturday evening for me. My wife has limited patience. All right. Uh, so yeah, probably I can live from the couch, but if I really want to do that course, and to be honest, we sort of actually interestingly have to continuously do that. No, I really want, if you ask me as a business owner, I would really want to create a course like that. But it is going to be such a hard course to maintain, such a hard course to maintain that I shiver just at the thoughts. For example, even only for our evasion course, for all of this, not even, I mean, the evasion course is still fine for our Azure courses. The kind of effort that goes into just, uh, to keep the stuff running, oh, that is mind-boggling. That is mind-boggling. I'm not even talking about evasion, just to keep stuff working in Azure. Microsoft is a nightmare. So, yeah, coming back to this is something that in our labs we see attackers using. And note that, as because someone asked that before the session started, that is it going to be easier for an AI? We actually, uh, these stats actually have something from we tied up with an organization, sort of tied up, partnered. They used our labs to run their AI agents for AD hacking, sort of AI agents for AD hacking. Just let's go with that. And some of these were triggered repetitively by the agents as well. I would not say that out of, let's say, the first one, out of these, I would not say 1,000 are from them. I would say 50 are from that test. So this is something that we would see across enterprises. So I would say to evade MDI, or for that matter, any identity-based attack tool, there are two ways. All right. One is the mindset. What mindset? There are detections other than EDR. May I have a quick show of hands on Discord? How many of you have started their career in InfoSec after 2020? May I have a quick show of hands? Yes, just say yes on Discord or write your ear. Many of you. That would be enough for me. That would be enough for me. I just want some validity from you. So yeah, that would be enough for me. Now, for for those of you who have started their career, I call this and sort of the EDR era. Now, what a lot of you have seen ever is evade EDR. Does this evade EDR? Why can't we evade EDR? Which is, to be honest, makes sense because your career was born in the EDR era, but there is a lot more to OPSEC than just the EDR. EDR evasion is not the only OPSEC. Okay. Yes, that is usually the first and almost always the most difficult step. But there is life, there is OPSEC beyond EDR. It always depends on what kind of skills you bring to the table, how much time you have for an operation. You may have a lot of times EDR is an issue, a problem is a problem. Because even if you're doing an assume breach scenario, you start with an issued machine or a workstation that is issued to an employee in the target organization, and that would absolutely be onboarded to EDR. And now, the moment you drop a publicly available tool, or even in a lot of cases, a technique on that, uh, it would be detected. So it makes sense for a lot of you to understand that bypassing or evading EDR is the only thing, but no, there is world beyond that. In fact, in my humble opinion, the last point, I'm skipping the middle two. For me personally, in my opinion, anything that silently detect activities. For me as an attacker, that is scary. My nightmare is I'm doing an operation and I think I'm absolutely fine. And then there are a couple of people in the SOC or IT administrators munching on their donuts, eating their, drinking their coffee and laughing their ass off at me. That, haha, now this idiot wants to Kerberoast stuff. Kerberoast, and then they are mocking me. And I have no idea. I think that I'm winning. I think that I'm doing absolutely fine because EDR is not blocking me. But then there is something that is silently not even present on my foothold. It is there on the DC and still detecting me. That is true for any network based detection, not only MDI or identity based attacks. But yeah, so for me, anything that does not immediately blocks you, that is it more effective? I'm not sure. Won't comment on that. Is it scary? Yes, it is. So, what is this mindset? What is the mindset that you may use to evade MDI or any identity based attacks? Two things. One, avoid communication with DCs. In the same breath, don't chase domain admins. Please understand this. Domain admin before lunch is still possible. It would always be possible as far as Active Directory is deployed, but let's not do that anymore. Okay. For example, most of us have understood that we should not add users to the domain admins group. Okay. If we have, let's say, domain admin privileges, for persistence, we should not add a user to the domain admins group. Okay. A lot of us have understood that. Similarly, understand this that domain admin privileges should not be compromised. Do not go for domain admin privileges. Why? That's bad OPSEC. There will be hundreds of organizations. I know personally of pen testing sweatshops where they would be, compromising organizations, by dime a dozen. Run SS, abuse stuff, get domain admin, add test domain admin, assessment done. Here is the report template, replace names if hashes required, then that. And you rake in a few 10Ks. A lot of organizations work that way. So it would stay the same for many organizations. You can get domain admin before lunch, but if you would really like to not get caught, just stay away from domain admin. Okay. It would initially be harder. You may relapse, but that is the mindset that you go for. Okay, domain admin, no domain admin. No. Second would be don't be reckless. Another would be don't be reckless. You would know, you know. This is actually my go-to mantra when it comes to evasion for any kind of detection mechanisms. Don't be reckless. You would know if you would be reckless. Imagine this. Let's talk about Bloodhound. If you are running Sharphound ingester on your foothold without taking any OPSEC into consideration, is it not being reckless? Do you think that everyone is so incompetent? correct? So you would know if you would be reckless. For example, if you are trying to curb roast absolutely everything in the target environment, so don't do that. Exactly, that's a very good point. I mean, I rarely comment on anyone's work, but majority of labs equals to bad habits. Yes, so not commenting on anyone at all, but yes, that actually is ingrained by a lot of our fellow uh, security professionals. This is how I got domain admin before lunch. Try this lab or a machine that absolutely has nothing to do. They will teach you a technique. Uh, okay, let me not say that. Those of you who know me for a while, I actively avoid, not for any other reason. I like to do my own work. I would like others to do their own work as well. But a lot of times, it is dictated by the way we learn stuff. Okay. If you're learning just to run a tool and get, let's say, a domain admin shell, then that is problematic. Okay. So don't be reckless. And you would know it. You would know it. Those cheesy romantic movies, right from Bollywood to Hollywood, where someone would tell their romantic interest to close their eyes. So if you close your eyes and you see an MDI alert, then don't do it. Okay. But please don't do that, especially those of you who are young, don't fall in love with stuff like this. There is life beyond it. So, mindset. We don't want domain admins, even if it is served on a platter. Specifically, if it is served on a platter. Nope. We are not interested in domain admin. Just avoid that temptation. Now, the tradecraft. You develop a mindset. Your mindset is always part of your tradecraft, but let's split them for a moment. What is a tradecraft? Always understand how your activities and tools interact with this is one very easy way, which I rarely see mentioned, is tools like Wireshark. It doesn't cost you anything. Whenever you are practicing anything at all, specifically in a lab, in your home lab or some platform, R labs, whatever, run Wireshark while performing that and keep an eye. In case of on-prem, keep an eye on what is the traffic that is going on, that is going to the DC. Okay, if you have the skills and time and patience, for example, turn on configure auditing on the domain controller so that maximum logs are generated. And then see that, okay, for example, I would like to mention an example here. Uh, when you run Sharphound has an option called exclude DCs. Yes, may I have a show of hand? How many of you know of that option, exclude DCs? We discuss it in our classes as well. Right. Now, what is that option for? Would anyone like to answer? What it excludes the DCs from? Quickly, I mean, from back of your head. What does exclude DC do? What does it exclude the DCs from? Exactly. Doesn't look for sessions. Net session enum, the Windows API that is used for enumerating sessions on a remote machine, that is not run on the DCs. Why MDI doesn't like it? One of the Recon uh, related alerts that we saw earlier, that is specifically if session enumeration is done on the DC. You run net session enum on the DC, and MDI is going to, I don't like that. Now, there has been a bug in Sharpon, which I didn't discover. No one from my team knew. One of our users actually, when They completed the course. They sent it to me that I was looking at the Wireshark traffic while running this, and session enumeration is actually done on the DC, even if you use exclude DCs. When was the bug introduced? I have no idea. Unfortunately, I never got the time to look into that in such depth, but they were right. When we investigated, we found out that it is absolutely right. Even if you use exclude DCs, SharpHound was still doing session enumeration on the domain controllers. That would result in this one. Okay. So make sure whenever not only enumeration tools, whenever you're using any tool that that uses Kerberos, interacts with DCs, make sure that you have Wireshark on. That is how you improve your tradecraft. Another tradecraft stuff will be don't downgrade encryption, no RC4. That would actually mean almost not doing Kerberos string. There are ways around a bit of some of them, but that is what it does mean. Okay. A question is, what if we use jitter or throttle flags while using SharpHound? That would work with some seams, but not with MDI. MDI is not looking for frequency. Jitter and throttle actually helps for network intrusion detection, NIDS or NIPS or seam devices, not for MDI or other identity-based detections. So it is sensible to use jitter and throttle, but that would not evade MDI. Okay. Next one is when it comes to tradecraft, never ever use SAMR. SAMR is SAM remote, something, if you're running net user DOM, that is SAMR. Don't use it. And be careful even with LDAP. For past couple of years, there has been a lot of focus on detecting LDAP based enumeration. Use ADWS. What are the tools that use ADWS, you ask? AD module, the Active Directory RSAT module, that in my opinion remains the best tool for at least for manual AD enumeration. It remains the best. What else? SoapHound. SoapHound remains pretty good. Pretty good. Why not fantastic? Minor modifications to it are required. For example, when you use the stock SoapHound, it actually in its LDAP queries, it sends the query SoapHound, and MDI has started picking that up. So please be a bit careful. A question is, what about RustHound CE? I've not tried that yet. I'm not sure if it uses ADWS, it would still be better with better than LDAP, but I've not tried it, so I can't comment. Okay. What else about in when it comes to tradecraft? If you are using forged tickets, make sure they are compliant to the Kerberos policy, the expiry time. For example, any ticket forging tool that is based on mimicards, it still uses the same logic. Forge a ticket that is valid for 10 years, and that would result in detection. And once again, do not forge tickets for any domain admin. That is the tradecraft. Now let's start looking at evading the 10 top 10 alerts that we looked at here. Okay. So the enumeration part, the recon part, three detections from our top 10: security principal recon, suspicious SMB enumeration from untrusted host, suspicious LDAP query. What is this? When is this triggered? Almost always by SharpHound and automated enumeration. Interestingly, other than when you query for users that have pre-auth disabled for ASRAP roasting, other than that, I was not able to trigger this using PowerView ever. For that, it is triggered. Sometimes even for RBCD, that is, if you look for objects that have constrained delegation, in that case, and for ASRAP roasting. Other than that, even using PowerView, it is not very easy to detect. However, if you use Sharpound or other automated enumeration tools, then one or all three of these are triggered. How do you evade them? Either use AD module, this is my favorite. SoapHound is mostly fine. Why mostly? Once again, it uses the SoapHound string in queries, in LDAP queries, and MDI has actually started to pick that up. And so has MDE. So if you are running enumeration now, and this becomes interesting. If you are running enumeration from a machine that from an in an environment that has MDI and your machine is onboarded to MDE, the Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft's EDR, even in that case, AD module has been fine. Okay. In case of SoapHound, it has been okay, not fine. Why? If you pick a stock version and use that, then okay. Any question? A question is, can MDI raise an alert if an LDAP query, a manual LDAP query, comes from a process which usually does not? Oh, nope. No. MDI does not have visibility on that as far as I know. Or I believe you can somehow turn it on. I was reading something about this, but no, MDI does not. MDI does not. I think you can turn it on somehow on in AD logs, but MDI has no such visibility. So if you are, let's say, injecting into a process and running enumeration from there, MDI would have nothing to do about it. But of course, MDE is going to go crazy on that. Okay. Curb roasting. Now, interestingly, I've not tested that yet because it is just, it is July. Microsoft is apparently going to kill RC4 for Kerberos this month. And if it does, if they are actually able to do that, what a score it would be. And then Kerberosting would be gone for good as well. And they have actually been trying to kill this for a while. Kerberos has been out, I think, for 11 years now. This would be the 11th year and or 10th or 11th year. And now probably, Tim Madden, I believe, talked about it in 2015, if, I pronounced and remember the name correctly. What Kerberos is, once again, you request a service ticket that is RC4 encrypted and you brute force it offline. If the KDC or the domain controller refuses to issue a ticket in RC4 encryption, the attack would be dead. So if it is dead, to be honest, it would be great. There have been a lot of decoys for curb roasting as well. If it is not, or as of now, what are the detections? Three detections in top 10. Suspected Kerberos SPN exposure, possible Kerberosting LDAP recon, possible Kerberosting attack following a suspicious LDAP query. The two things are very visible here. One is, although MDI has a capability of maintaining a very long timeline, however, this also indicates a frequency. Okay. Interestingly, in my testing, this was triggered when you run, let's say, Rubius Kerberos. That is, yeah, Rubius Kerberos simple or just Rubius Kerberos. Now, what happens in that case that Rubius goes to the DC, requests a list of, sends an LDAP query so that it returns all the service accounts and then it requests service tickets for all of them. That is what being reckless is called. How do you avoid this? Enumerate using the AD module that is ADW that uses ADWS or PowerView that uses LDAP. Find your target and then request one service ticket or a TGS ticket at a time. Works like a charm. Rarely would you have a detection. Just be a bit patient. Just do not try to be domain admin before lunch. Specifically for Kerberos, uh, deception in Active Directory uh, picked up in late 2010s, that is around 2018, 19 up to 21, 22. There was some fantastic, phenomenal work, and industry disruption, acquisitions, mergers, etc., for Active Directory deception tools. That was sort of peak. Why? One of the reasons, and I'm not making this up, I've played with those tools, Kerberos, I've helped designing at least a couple of them. Okay. I was worried I will blurt out the name, that was in a strict NDA. So I just sort of hesitated. Am I going to blurt out the name? So Kerberos was one of and remains one of the most interesting Kerberos target. You see, you gain access to an environment. You look at what accounts are Kerberos, you see, oh wow, a domain administrator that is Kerberos stable, and you try Kerberosing it, you may or may not succeed, that doesn't matter. The moment you interact with that account, you would be detected. Okay. And that does not need a multi-thousand-dollar tool. I created a simple poor man's deception, deploy deception, presented about it at BruCon. You can, create an actual account and configure verbose logging on it, and that would be enough. Even if someone interacts with the account, the moment someone interacts with that account, there would be a 4662. Okay, so that is for Kerberos. How do you avoid it? You know, piecemeal approach. You enumerate first, find a target, and then request a service ticket for it, and you would be fine. Next, overpass the hash, ask TGT, that is, replaying credentials. Two detections: suspicious Kerberos authentication, suspected overpass the hash. Now, this is something that is triggered when you use overpass the hash or you authenticate from a new machine, and there is no blanket. This is the one that always defeats me. If you extract a TGT and use it from a new machine, if you extract AES keys, not RC4, AES keys, use Ask TGT to start a process on a new machine and use it from there if you get a certificate. In all of these cases, one of these alerts may be generated, and unfortunately for an attacker, there is no blanket evasion for this. Difficult to avoid. Are there ways around? Yes, you stay on the same machine from where you extracted the tickets from. You use attacks like token impersonation. You stay on the same machine. That is the idea. Okay, do not abuse the portability of Kerberos tickets. Stay in the session and you would be fine. Stay on the machine, you reuse the session and you would be fine. Okay. But I would still say no blanket evasion, because in all other cases, we are assuming that we can run the attack from any machine that can reach the DC and we would still be fine. Okay. Please feel free to interrupt me on and ask a question on Discord whenever you want. Okay. So in this case, user impersonation probably, I should say, is the only case. I would still not write it though, because that needs you to stay on the target wherever you get the access on. Okay. The golden ticket attack, the headline attack of on-prem AD. Detection is possible golden ticket attack. When is it triggered? When we use a forged TV DGT with no prior service ticket or TGS. Now, this is something I believe that is changed a lot. Okay. Why? Previously, not sure exactly when it was changed, but not long ago, if you were not targeting the any of the domain administrators, it would be fine. For example, let's say you have a user called company admin who is not a member of domain admin but is an administrator through restricted groups on a majority of machines in your network. If you have access to the Kerberos KBTGT secrets of the KBTGT account, you can forge a golden ticket for that user for company admin, access any machine or machines other than the DC, and you would be fine. However, however, since some time that has not been the case. If you request, if you forge a golden ticket, you would be detected regardless of what user you forge it for. Okay. And you would see that in the evaded by section, I'm very cautious because I'm pretty sure that Microsoft will come up with detection for diamond ticket as well. So as of this month, as of the time of writing, the diamond ticket attack is not detected. What is diamond ticket attack? When you do not forge a ticket, you pick up an existing TGT, decrypt it, sort of decrypt its PAC, uh, make changes inside it, repack it, re-encrypt it, and then send it to the DC. What is the difference? The KDC, the key distribution center, would be able to spot, okay, when was this TGT requested? It looks up in the list. Okay, this was requested. It is a valid TGT. So a diamond ticket remains an evasion of persistence technique that was golden ticket. Okay. However, I would suggest not to even use diamond ticket, when you go for those that much high privileges. That is something that you may not actually like to play with. Let me see if I can show you something like this. Sorry, I can show you some of the evasions. I have them ready. Do, do, do. Okay, let me go back to curb roasting for a moment. So for those of you who are not very well versed with curb roasting would also understand that. So what is detected is this part. If you run Rubius with just the Kerberos parameter, what it does, and there may be a detection in some time because of this, is it goes to the DC, asks for asks for what or SAM account type, that is user, and service principal name any. Just it should not be null. It should not be Kirby TGT and should not be a machine account. Are there any accounts? If yes, please provide me a service ticket. Please note that you do not need special privileges to request a service ticket. Anyone can request a service ticket for any service account. This is how detection or an alert is generated by MDI. This was reckless. Okay. Any question? Just give me a moment. Okay. A question is an alert generated even if we request a ticket for a single user? No, it is not. It is not. So the way to sort of evade this is, let's say if you want to target this account, you simply mention the account here. So the command would be something like this. That is, we specify the user that we would like to request a ticket for, and we go for RC4 OPSEC as well. That is, request a RC4 encrypted ticket only if the account supports it. So that helps in evading the encryption downgrade detections. Yes, exactly. You enumerate for evading curb roasting related alerts. You enumerate using either the AD module or Power View, and then you request a service ticket. That way, you would be fine. Let me see if there is already an alert. There may be some delay. Let me see if the alert is already there for this one. You see that? Because I ran Rubius recklessly, this computer actually made a request exactly what Rubius said. Okay. However, if we run it, first we enumerate and then we run it like this, there would absolutely be no alert. Any question here? Is AD module better than PowerView in terms of OPSEC? Yes, it is. It is. It always is. Uses ADWS by default, provides excellent OPSEC both at the DC end and on your foothold. Okay. Now for golden ticket, I mean the diamond ticket evades it. I don't think there would be any need to show that one. DC sync. So we started with enumeration, then sort of something that provides us credential access and lateral movement, credential access, then lateral movement, then domain dominance, and then domain dominance. What is DC sync? DC sync is one of the most interesting attacks in the world of Active Directory. You simply go to the DC and ask nicely that, hey, could you please provide me access for the domain administrator? And if you have just a couple of rights on the domain object, the DC would comply. It would say, okay, why not? Okay. Now, MDI absolutely hates this, hates it. And the detection is amazingly easy to go for. Any replication request by non-DC principal. So whenever you are looking for evasion when it comes to MDI, if you look at my slides of my talk or my talk at Black Hat US in 2017, the alerts in ATA used to be a lot more uh, verbose. They have cut down on a lot of information. Otherwise, those were the days where you can actually go ahead. Let me show you that in those old slides. Those were the days where you can actually go ahead and read the alert, and you will get to know how to evade this. Uh, Let me show you. And for example, for golden ticket, this used to be the detection. This is from 2017. The encryption method of the TGT field of TGS request message from two computers has been downgraded based on previously learned behavior. It would actually show you, it was so nice. It was so nice that it would actually tell you that, okay, this is the problem that I have with you. Probably, don't do that anymore. It used to be that nice. If we look at, is there any other screenshot that I have here? There should be a couple of them. Nope. Okay, I think, but that drives the point home. If you look at the golden ticket attack, not the golden ticket, do I have any replication? So if you look at any detection of the replication of directory services, uh, the reason is this is not a recognized domain controller. That is the only problem that MDI has here, that are not non-recognized. This machine or user or whatsoever is not recognized as a domain controller. Still, they are sending replication requests, anomaly alert. That is the problem here. So how do you avoid it? Two ways. One is, as someone mentioned, if you have other accounts like the MSOL account from Entra Connect, if you use on-prem SharePoint, it also used to have some accounts that would have some groups that would have DC sync rights. So if you have such accounts or groups in the target domain, if you compromise them, run DC sync, that would not be an anomaly. If you don't have that, because that is a massive prerequisite, what is it that you can do? If you can generate a silver ticket, you can steal a TGT if you have the machine account credentials of the domain controller machine account, or even if you inject SID history of the DC of the domain controller or enterprise domain controllers group, you can evade DC sync. Other than that, this is something that MDI has put its foot down on, that, okay, this is something I'm absolutely not going to allow. Okay. So a silver ticket using the domain controller machine account, a TGT of the domain controller machine account, RC4 or AES of the domain controller machine account. RC4 may not live for a while now. Or SID history of the domain controller or the enterprise domain controllers group. If that is what your ticket has, then MDI would be fine with it. Otherwise, it won't be. And I'm pretty sure, see, a lot of time what happens is, uh, having worked with the team that developed ATA and looking at the recent developments with MDI, I'm pretty sure that the team that works behind MDI, the engineers who work behind MDI, they on MDI, they absolutely are fantastic. They know Kerberos a lot better than I would ever. However, the issue with alerts that need not be tuned. issue with alerts that come out of the box is to cut down on the number of false positives. No one would like to look at alerts, when there would be an alert on every second request. That is the reason. Even if MDI looks at this and says that, okay, now suddenly this domain controller machine account authenticated from this workstation, it would still not alert. Why? To cut down on false positives. So this remains a valid evasion. Okay. A question is, if we are in a forest and have compromised a DC in a domain, can we use it to DC sync attack other domains in the forest? You can, but if you don't use the SID history of domain controllers or enterprise domain controllers, there would still be detection by MDI. Okay. So that was about DC sync. Do I have, let me try an evasion of DC sync. I'll just run the DC sync and probably there would be no alert for it. Why I'm saying probably? Because this is a machine that has been very well profiled by MDI as a compromised machine. So that actually raises the chances of an alert. So what we are doing is, okay, let me explain that to you. What we did here was we created a silver ticket, and there is a typo as it actually run it correctly. Yes, it does. So we are creating a silver ticket for the LDAP service. This is the RC4 for the domain controller. SID. We are still creating the silver ticket for a domain administrator. So this demonstrates two things. If you are in a post-compromise scenario where you somehow have access to the RC4 of the domain controller machine account, this proves two things. One, a silver ticket remains for past 11 years, 10 years, a silver ticket remains the Achilles heel for MDI. That is one. Two, it doesn't matter if you're using the domain controller machine account, it doesn't matter even if you go for the domain administrator here, there would be no detection at all. So once we have injected this, we can go ahead and run a DC sync attack without absolutely any detection at all. A very good question is, does MDI trigger on coercion based on, because I'm not a very big fan of that, based on our labs, it is only the Windows search component that the DFS abuse that actually is triggered. The print spooler, that is the printer bug, that doesn't trigger MDI still, interestingly. But if you use the distributed file system, the DFS course, that actually triggers MDI. Okay. Please remember, those of you who have access to the lab portal at Enterprise Security, you can always analyze this. You do have access to this dashboard. Okay, this is what you see as the XDR dashboard label, and you have access to all this data. So please feel free to analyze this. Okay. These are the ones that I actively discussed, top 10 from our labs, and in my experience and opinion, usually top 10 that you will see in enterprise environments. Now, while I was looking for something interesting, I came across this fantastic post by research by Zero Salarium, the EDR choker related stuff. So, what is this research? In case of EDR choker, which the person who research have tested with multiple EDR sensors, is you can set a very small outbound bandwidth for EDR sensors using the Microsoft QoS class, quality of service class in WMI. So for this, all I needed to figure out was what is the service name. Of course, this is the sensor service name, very visible on the DC. If you set up a very small outbound bandwidth for the MDI sensor service, there would absolutely be no alerts, and there will be no health issues reported by the sensor. So we have tested this. This is absolutely, of course, tested in the lab. So what I experienced was in rare cases, if your domain controller has a small RAM and we were running this command, it was running out of RAM. I'm not sure why. And then when we increase the RAM to what Microsoft recommends for sensors, then this was perfectly fine. Okay. Please note that, however, this is very domain dominance part. This is post compromise for sure. You need admin privileges on the DC, or in cases of other machines, admin privileges on them to play with this. Will still be useful in domain dominance scenarios though. So it was fantastic to look at. Okay. What does the command look like? It is pretty easy. Uh, Let me actually, in place of running this on the DC, if I just show you the command, I think that would be good enough as well. What we are doing here is this. To be honest, this is the only change that I've done in the research. Right? So absolutely everything is else is from a no salarium. This is what I have done. That's all. So if we set this up on the DC, absolutely no alerts. But once again, this is a post uh, compromise scenario. Now, interestingly, uh, I presented a research at DEF CON about the race toolkit in 2019 that was about using ACLs, security descriptors. Now, when I looked at it, that was the first thing that I looked at. That okay, what if I provide a non-admin user full control over this one? Fortunately for defenders, unfortunately for attackers, it is not only controlled by ACL, but the provider. That is, you need admin rights as well. It is not controlled only by ACL. However, having said that, that is a very good area of research. You may like to explore that a bit more. That if you have, let's say, full control over the ACL of this namespace, is there a way where you can actually run this without needing administrative access on the DC? While setting up, while setting up the backdoor, you would still need admin privileges. But once you have set up the backdoor, can you turn off MDI whenever you want? Okay, that would be interesting a thing to research on. All right. So at least for the top 10 that we looked at, sorry, other than the top 10 that we looked at, these diamond tickets still in July 2026, silver ticket still in July 2026 remain undetected. In fact, silver ticket remains my favorite. Regardless of what service you target on what machine, of course, if you're not targeting the DC in case of a silver ticket, you would not be sending the forged ticket to the DC at all. All right. So there is no point of detection at all. Now, even if you target the DC with a silver ticket, it remains undetected. There are tools, for example, in one of my CRTP boot camps, a user mentioned, and I sort of checked, silver fort detects silver ticket, but not MDI. And then persistence techniques like admin SD holder, abuse of admin SD holder, specifically GPO related attacks, absolutely no visibility, no alerts by MDI at all on any of the GPO related attacks. Absolutely nothing. Nothing on abuse of security descriptors. And when it comes to persistence, you inject your own SSP, there is nothing on persistence mechanisms. Okay. So I think it is the time to wrap this up almost. So once again, what do we conclude? What is the takeaway from this? The takeaway is once again, don't be reckless. I picked this. This line was also there in my month of Azure red teaming where we talked about Entra ID, protection evasion. So don't be reckless. Once again, I repeat this. This is true for all Microsoft Defender for whatever. If you are not reckless, these tools are designed to detect majority of attackers, like 95, 99% of us who don't have either enough time or motivation to look for OPSEC. Okay. And please, no domain admin before lunch. Drop that mentality. Right? A limitation of this research, whatever I did was that most of the testing was performed in a lab environment. Not all of it, but most of it. Evasion, I could not ask for validation from production environments. We have tested stuff in production environment, got no uh, intimation that, okay, are you trying to do something? But no production environment said, yeah, you bypassed us. But yeah, okay. So, please provide feedback. Find me on Twitter. Uh, Join our Discord. If you are on Discord right now, then you know where you are. So, general channel for this webinar, buy stuff from us, sample free Azure Red Team Labs. That would be all from my side.